Well, can we give a round of applause for our special needs buddies? Come on, special needs buddies, wherever you are. I hadn't seen that video until just now, and I'm like really overwhelmed. That was amazing. It's as if I wrote it myself. Here's what I'd like you to say. That was incredible. That's why we're in Norfolk. That's why we're in Strawbridge, to keep the local church local. That's why we're a multi-site church. We are for families, and families take all different shapes and kinds, and we love our little guys with special needs, and so we're excited. I'm just so thank you. And it's very brave to make a video. Let me tell you, it's the worst, actually. So big thanks to those of you who are brave enough. Thank you so much, Strawbridge. Love you, and good to be with you today. Well, hey, thanks for being with us today. It's been a big couple weeks in the life of our family. I've been gone the last couple of weeks. First reason was that my oldest son graduated from college. Here's a proud dad pic, he is, so he commissioned into the Navy, so he is an ensign in the United States Navy, which means he is off the payroll. Let's go. Let's hear it for federal jobs. Come on, as a dad, that's a good thing. And then my wife and I celebrated our 26th wedding anniversary like 2 days later, and thank you. I didn't actually expect the applause for that. Yeah, and so we went out of town, went down to the Outer Banks for a few days, the two of us, and it's been fun. And then this August, and I promise not to talk about this all summer, but this August is my 20-year anniversary here at Grace, which has me sort of, I didn't mean for all the clapping, all the extra clapping. Thank you. It just has me sort of extra reflective, and so I'm going to take a few liberties with the sermon today, with this time, and I promise not to do it all summer, but a few liberties today. The other thing that has me sort of reflective in the way I want to share with you today, and I'm really excited about sort of letting you in on some of what's been going on in our church over the past 32 years, is that a couple of months ago, we were at a team building offsite with about a dozen staff people, and my co-lead pastor, Matt Breitenberg, who actually you're going to meet later in the service. Some of you don't know that. You've heard that I'm a co-lead pastor, but you've never seen the other co-lead pastor on stage. That's because Matt does all things executive, like strategy, finance, HR, so we sort of divide the responsibilities like that. So we were at this offsite, and he was leading this session that he titled on our little agenda, Financial Realities. And every time I read it, I went, dun, dun, dun. And he has the incredible gift of taking incredibly complex things and making them simple. It's beautiful so that I can understand them. There's a reason we have Matt. It's because keeps us financially solvent. So anyway, so he does this session, and he's talking about the next 3 years and some projections. And so leaving that time together, I'm thinking about, like just sort of what needs to happen over the next few years to keep us on track financially. And I'm driving to a wedding in South Carolina. And it's just me, and so I'm getting some good windshield time, and the radio's off, and I'm driving down the road, and I'm thinking about this presentation. I'm thinking about, the next few years, what needs to happen, and I start to get some ideas. Now, I'm an ideas guy. If you know me, having ideas, I just have ideas all the time, but sometimes I really like them. So this is one of those times I really liked my ideas. On Friday, thinking about it, then got up Saturday morning, and I made this eight slide PowerPoint presentation for our staff directional team. 8 slides, nothing fancy, white background, just 8 simple slides. Here's what I think we should do. Because there's a lot of ways we could have gone. We could have hired a consultant to help us. We could have had a campaign. We could have done all these things. I'm like, okay, here's what I think we should do. I said, guys, I'm really excited. I got these 8 slides. And I came to our directional team, and I put up my slides on the TV, and slide 1, and they're just short, like boom, 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 boom. And at the end, I thought they were going to be like, Eric, we are so inspired. That is amazing. God, thank you so much for being our pastor. That's what I thought they were going to say. And instead, they said this. Now, as a leader, when the people you're supposed to be leading suggest you include vision, that's not a real shining moment for me personally. Like, maybe you could add some vision. I'm like, wait, I thought I would just say, hey, we have some need, and then everybody would go, oh, wow, and then everybody, that would be the end of it. We could move on. They're like, you should have some vision. I was like, okay, so go back to the drawing board. Now, some of you have been around church for a little while. You picked up on it, like, hey, so is this sermon going to be about money? And maybe some of you are thinking actually right now, oh, great, a money sermon. So if you're thinking this right now, And I don't mean great. I mean it like I would use it sarcastically. Some of you are such good people. You're like, yeah, oh, great. Like my buddy right over there, I know, he's like, oh, great. So if that's what you're thinking, couple pieces of good news for you. Number one, if you are new to Grace Bible Church, we want you to know we don't want your money. We are so glad you are here. If you're not a follower of Jesus, if you're checking our church out, please, the generous people around you have made all of this possible, and we are really glad that you're here today. And I'm really glad you're here today because you're going to get like a good behind the scenes of what God has been doing. And if you have been here a while, the other piece of good news is there's nothing I can do to take your money. Like literally, I have no power over you, so you can relax. Now, what I did a couple weeks ago, I actually preached this sermon for our staff and our elder team. And after our elder team, as we were debriefing it, they also had some feedback. It's been a real good month for Eric. That's why. Glad I got my kid graduated. He said, Eric, instead of like a sermon that has to do with money, what if we like emphasized God's faithfulness? So, also another good thing for me to know as a pastor. Okay, so he sort of gave me a challenge. Our elders gave me a challenge. They're like, what if at the end of the message people said, that was great. God is faithful to our church sermon. So that's my goal today, not a money sermon. My goal is that at the end of our time today, you will say, that was great. God is faithful to our church. Now, as I've thought about that, here's what I have that most of you don't have. I have 20 years of watching God be faithful to our church. Now, our church is about 32 years old, and I'm gonna tell you some of that story in a minute. But I wanna tell you, as I think back on the last 20 years, when I walk in to the Lynn Haven campus to go to work tomorrow morning, it will happen like it does about every single time I walk into the Lynn Haven campus. I will walk through this front door, I'll go beep, beep, like alarm, boom, 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 walk in, I'll think, God, you gave us all this? It's amazing. God, you gave us all this. He has been so good to us. It's incredible to think about what he's done over the years. And so as I was thinking about this time, the scripture that just welled up in me, just like from the bottom of my heart, and again, some of you have been here like 32 years from the beginning. You feel this even more than I do. But the scripture that welled up in me is the Apostle Paul writing to the church at Ephesus. There's this beautiful prayer in chapter 3. In fact, I'd encourage you, if you need a prayer, if you're like, I don't know how to pray, go to Ephesians chapter 3. It starts like about verse 14. Just read Paul's prayer. This is the end of Paul's prayer. He says, now to him who is able to do, talking about Jesus, immeasurably more than all we could ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. To him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. And when I think about 32 years of our church, we don't have to do so much clapping. So thank you. I appreciate the clapping, but I'll go long and then I'll get in trouble. So it'll be, and we've already heard about all the coaching I've gotten on this message. I need it to go well, okay, y'all? It's immeasurably more. It is immeasurably more than I could have ever asked or imagined. And so I was thinking about, like, how do we help capture this, right? Because if you've been here for a year or 5 years or 10 years, you don't have the full history. Now, I've had to learn what it was like for people who've been here 32 years, but I figured out an illustration for today. And the way I figured out this illustration was an actual conversation that we actually had in our family last night in our den. And it all centers around this picture right here. This is a picture that hangs in our den. Now, these are 4 of my children. Now, what you know if you've been around a little while is that I actually have 5 children. I have 5 children. And our youngest child, she said last night, Dad, can't you just Photoshop me into the picture? Because she's our youngest, right? She's our youngest. And she just really has, and I told her I was gonna say this, because if I don't, I have to pay her $5. That's the deal in our family. I can't tell a story about my kids without checking with them. So she wasn't alive. That's why she's not in the picture, right? She literally didn't exist in the universe when we took this. Can't you Photoshop us in? We're like, no, we can't. We actually had a family before you. I know, hard to believe. And when we do Christmas ornaments, my wife gives the kids a new Christmas ornament every year. And almost every Christmas, someone will be like, why does Josiah have the most ornaments? Because he's the oldest. He will always have the most ornaments. So look, if you're new, if you're like, you've been here a year, 2, 3, 5 years, whatever, and like 40% of you have been around less than 5 years. So it's a lot of you. Don't feel bad. Our church just has a history that predates you, but you're still a part of the family. Because that's the way that the church, the people who are part of the church, the followers of Jesus, the metaphor in the New Testament is a family. So you're just newer to the family. So what I want to do today is tell you a little bit about what God's been doing in your family. And when I was working on this, my friend Simi Carlson, who was on staff for 20 years at Grace, she retired 2 years ago as our next gen executive director. She actually had a membership document from 2003. She actually had the Word document. This is a membership packet from 2003 that described the beginning of our church. So I'm just going to read you a little bit from this doc that was written in 2003 about our church. It says in our history, Grace Bible Church was founded in July of 1991, July 28th to be exact. We began in the Virginia Beach Pavilion with 155 people on the first Sunday. And we continued to meet at the pavilion for several months until their scheduling caused us to move to a nearby Radisson hotel. Strawbridge Portable Church, let's go. It's in our DNA, Strawbridge. Come on, this is not new for us. Portable is how we started. In January of 92, we were blessed with a miracle. The use of high schools, which had been closed to churches before, suddenly became a possibility. And the principal of Old Kellam High School opened his arm to us when other high schools didn't want to talk to us, and we were there until October 94, and we praised the Lord for that facility. We love Corporate Landing Middle School, Strawbridge. We've been Portable 30 years ago, and it's happening again, and God sometimes grows his church in that way. Now, in April of 93, the Lord made available the possibility of purchasing 14 acres of land for about $34,000 an acre, which reminds all of us we should have bought land in 2003. Who knew? On September 19th, we decided to stop negotiations on that acreage we were considering for our church home. Within weeks, he opened the door for us to lease part of a shopping center on Shore Drive, a former B-Lo grocery store. We have a picture of a former B-Lo grocery store. This was our original church building. There's a picture. We're going to put it up there on the screen for you of the B-Lo. There you go. That's B-Lo. That became our first church building. And then there was a bank there. And it says, and then we built out the site ourselves. We saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, had a worship center that sat about 400 people. And then you can show this lobby of Shore Drive there. It looked like that when we finished. Now, we are a church, this is from 2003. We are a church that emphasizes expository preaching, contemporary worship, small groups, and missions. We make use of creative art forms, aiding worship such as multimedia, drama, dance, singing, special music, instrumentation. 2003, y'all. We are committed to reach those who are unchurched and not believing, yet who are seeking. This is a part of everything we do, including the purpose behind equipping believers and families. Now, here's the thing. When I think about our church, I do not think about a church that has a big building off of Tidewater Drive in Norfolk. I do not think about a church that has a beautiful building here on Ansel Lane. I do not think about a multi-site church with a new campus in Southern Virginia Beach. I came to Grace Bible Church into a converted B-Lo on Shore Drive, which was great, served us well, but I can tell you as a staff member, there was often rat poop in some of the offices. When you went to the bathrooms, the ceiling tiles did this like blah, 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 blah thing, right? And we didn't really have a parking team as much, shout out to our parking teams, but we did have a vomit cleanup team. Because our old building was between 2 bars, not 1 bar, 2 bars. And so on Saturday night, when people finished having a good time and puked all over the concrete in front of our church building, we had a bunch of dudes who would get there early in the morning, and we had a vomit cleanup team. Now listen, some of y'all are like, oh, this big church, all this stuff, lights, TV screens. I'm like, no, that's not us. That's not our family history. We're blue collar. We're blue collar. In my heart, we're Shore Drive. We're rat poop and ceiling tiles and vomit cleanup team. And this is just like God's, apparently we need a parking team instead. That's how I think of us. And here's why this is so important to me. It helps me be thankful for the immeasurably more. It helps me be thankful for the immeasurably more. That's who we are in my heart. So this is like, just to keep going here. 1991, we begin. 1993, we moved to Shore Drive. 2007, we purchased the land for our Ansel Lane campus. Now, when we purchased this land in 2007, this was trees and puddles and nothing, and people thought we were silly. What, you want to have a church next to a power substation, like in the woods? What is going on with that? And yet, that's where God led us. And then, does anybody remember what happened in 2008? Some of you are old enough to remember. Yeah. So we bought this land. We're like, we're going to build a building. And then the economy went, no, you're not. And so Matt Breitenberg, who was not on staff yet, he was an elder. Matt, my co-lead pastor, he was serving as an elder at that time. I remember the Sunday. He got up on Shore Drive and he said, hey, y'all, just want you to know, thankful for your generosity, thankful that we could buy this land. We don't know when we're going to be able to afford to build. The economy's rough. And so that's just where we sat. And we said, it was open-handed. God, how are you going to lead us? Well, thankfully, over the next couple of years, he did lead us. And in 2011, we opened the first draft of the Lynn Haven campus. I'll show you a picture of the original version of the Lynn Haven campus. Not nearly as cool as the current iteration, but that was the original Lynn Haven campus. Now, when we left Shore Drive, when we left the Below on Shore Drive, we were paying $20,000 a month in rent. Can you imagine? For like 18,000 square feet on Shore Drive, $20,000 a month. Our mortgage on this property is $30,000 a month. Isn't that incredible? That is amazing stewardship that we own, that 12 years from now, this will be completely paid for. It's incredible. We're so excited for that. What an incredible opportunity. And then as we continue, 2013, we committed to this multi-site strategy because we knew we were only going to get so big here at Lynn Haven. And we said, well, we got a bunch of people coming from Norfolk. Shout out to the Norfolk campus. And so we started Norfolk in a rented facility in 2015. This is the old Norfolk campus. You want to see it? That's what the old Norfolk campus looked like. There was a shut down strip joint right here, like right here. They just bulldozed it, I heard a few weeks ago. I mean, it was like, it was just, but it got us going, right? It got us going. And then in 2017, we expanded the Lynn Haven campus to what it is now. And then in 2019, we started this thing called For the 757. Now, what we didn't know in 2019 is that when we started For the 757, we got a big sign out in front of the Lynn Haven campus, actually looks like this. When we started For the 757, we did it because we needed to raise some money to build the final version of the Norfolk campus and to launch Strawbridge. And so we had a generosity initiative For the 757, and all that was going great. A couple things we didn't see coming. After 2019. I know you're thinking of COVID. We didn't see that coming, but that actually wasn't what we didn't see coming. What we didn't see coming was how much the message of For the 757 would capture our hearts. You know the message of For the 757 right here? For too long, the church has been known for what it's against. We want to be known for what we're for. We are for the 757. And it went from being something we were using as like a theme to raise the money to build Norfolk and launch Strawbridge, and COVID came, and so that sort of messed a bunch of things up and pushed things away. But what didn't change was this heart. That's just a fancy way of saying God's grace is for people. And so that's why we have t-shirts and golf shirts and banners and all that stuff, right? Because when I'll be wearing a For the 757 shirt and someone will say, what's For the 757? And I'll say all the time, well, you know how like the church is sometimes known for what it's against? And I've never had someone say, no, what are you talking about? Not one time. Every time I've said that, they're like, yeah, because that's what they think. I said, yeah, well, at our church, we want to be known for what we're for. We're for the 757. Now, if you're really, really new, you're like, what's 757? It's our area code. We used to have to dial those on phones, but it's our area code. It went from a generosity initiative to just an expression of our heartbeat. So we're just staying with it because it's who we are. It's who we are. We are for families. We are for recovery. We are for racial unity. We are for people meeting Jesus and growing with Jesus. We want to be known for what we are for. So that started in 2019. It's just an expression of what we are. Now, God allowed us in 2020 to open the Norfolk campus. How about the new Norfolk campus? If you haven't seen a picture, you've never been to Norfolk, it's gorgeous. Is that a little better than the old Norfolk campus? Love you, Norfolk. We see you, Norfolk. We're so excited that we were able to launch that building in the middle of Strawbridge. And then the last thing there was in 2022, we launched the Strawbridge campus in Corporate Landing Middle School. Now, Strawbridge, you know this if you're there, but I know a lot of you haven't been there. So this is Strawbridge. Just a couple pics from Strawbridge. You got 3 pictures here. You walk in the front door, boom, first thing you see, 4 to the 757, and you walk into the lobby, and they convert the lobby. It looks so great. And the auditorium there looks so great. It's fantastic. It's maybe our best sounding auditorium. We love it. We're so thankful for what God has done in all of those environments. It's just exciting to see what he's happened with Strawbridge. So you can keep going. So that's the history, but it's not the story. That's like the history of our church, but it's not the story of our church. So I was thinking, what would capture the story of our church? And I could tell stories about a lot of you, but I thought I'll tell you one of mine. I'll tell you one of the ways that our church's vision for people to have a growing relationship with Jesus has impacted me personally. I was 28 in 03 when I came to be the youth pastor, and did that for a couple of years, and then we decided as a team, I didn't decide because I wasn't involved in those decisions at the time, but the elders and senior leadership decided that we should hire a new position called a community pastor to help with small groups and local outreach and that sort of thing. And I decided, hey, maybe I was interested in that. At this point, I'm in my early 30s, and I think maybe my time with students is coming to a close, and maybe I'll apply for the community pastor position. So our executive pastor at the time, his name was Don Robinson, and our senior pastor at the time, his name was Dean Woodward. So I talked with Dean and Don and said, hey, what do you guys think? Is this something you could see me doing? Because if they said no, then it was, hey, so they said, yeah, we could see you doing that, Eric. So search committee, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, okay, they throw my name in the hat for our first community pastor. And I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday morning, and I was wrapping up my accountability group, which meets, at that time, met at the Hilltop Panera. And I was leaving that Panera, and I got a call from my executive pastor, Don Robinson, who was my boss at the time. And he said, hey, I've been talking to the staff about you taking this role. Would love to just talk with you about that when you have some time. And I said, sure, love to. And I jokingly said, hey, I was on my way to Region. I was doing a couple classes at Region at the time. I ended up finishing my master's at Bethel Seminary in Minnesota, but I was doing a couple classes at Region at the time, getting started. And I said to Don, I said, well, hey, I could just skip class and come early. And he said, yeah, why don't you do that? That's not good. So rolled into Don's office over up on Shore Drive, and he said, Eric, it's the best of times, it's the worst of times. He said, good news is your fellow staff members, they love you, they think you're good at your job. So, okay. He said, the bad news is they think you're arrogant and uncompassionate. It's like getting hit in the gut with a baseball bat. I've been a pastor for 10 years. I don't know in your job what sort of feedback you don't want to get, but in my industry, arrogant and uncompassionate is not the kind of feedback you're looking for. And I listened, and he coached me, and he was so gracious to me. And I knew he was right. And I could see in my mind, oh yeah, there. And I went to every staff member, which wasn't that many at the time, and apologized, made amends. And they were gracious to me, and eventually they gave me the job, which was nice. And but here's the thing, y'all. Here's way my story intersects with the story of our church. And what I want for you, this is like in my story, our story, my story with our church is a church that offers God's grace to people who need it. And I'm just so thankful to be one of those people. Because I just have a hunch. I don't have any, I don't know for sure, but I have a hunch that there are places where if, arrogant and uncompassionate is how you're described, it's just time to, move on. But I got grace. I got God's grace. I got grace from our staff team. I got grace from all of you. Continue to get grace. Our story, our history, that's our history. It's amazing what God's done in our history. But our story is a church that offers God's grace to people who need it. So if you need grace today, you're in the right place. And I will tell you, if you don't need grace today, I understand why this feels a little odd to you. Because we've never been a church of people who just sort of like have it together. We've always been a church of people who need God's grace. That's what we get to do. And so just here's what God's been doing it through this group called Rooted. Some of you have participated in Rooted. Rooted is a small group discipleship program. So excited about getting people established in following Jesus. And it's just this beautiful, like, here's like sort of both the basics and the like deeper levels of following Jesus all in one. It's just sort of mysterious how that happens. And so we launched Rooted in January, and I told the team launching Rooted, I said, hey, my goal is to have 150 people go through Rooted this year. And I said, that was my goal for the year. Official, like, write it down. That's my goal. And so then people started signing up in January. Y'all started signing up. And the first week, like 200 of you signed up. And then 300 of you signed up. And the team who's actually has to do the work, which isn't me, they're like, Eric, it's a lot of people. I said, don't worry. They'll sign up, but then they'll stop coming. And then it was 400, and then 535 of you signed up in January. I said the first week, I'm like, don't worry. They're gonna quit. A third of them are gonna quit because with Rooted, you have to do homework and you have to show up. And we graduated like 495 of you in April, which is both like clap-worthy. But also, I got in big trouble because no one believes me when I say anything. So then in the spring, when we started Rooted again, I'm like, there's going to be like 30 people, and there's 100 of you. So I don't know, but here's what I know. That Rooted has led a bunch, and I've gone through it twice. Rooted leads us into a growing relationship with Jesus. If you want to have a growing relationship with Jesus, we'd encourage you to join a Rooted group. If you've done Rooted once, maybe like me, you want to do it again. But it's something God's doing in our church to give us grace. What else he's doing? He's doing Celebrate Recovery. We celebrate 6 years, a week from Monday, 6-year anniversary, Celebrate Recovery here at the Lynn Haven campus. Thank you, that's worth clapping for. That's actually the only one I expected to clap. A week from tomorrow night, I'll be speaking at Celebrate Recovery tomorrow night. But Celebrate Recovery took us from a church that cares to a church with a plan to care. See the difference? We have always been a caring church. But we didn't have a plan to care. So if you were in crisis, you had a hurt, habit, a hang-up, an addiction, you were stuck, you would come to meet with me or a pastor, and we would pray with you, encourage you, and send you on your way. But you wouldn't have a plan to get better. And what Celebrate Recovery has done is created an environment, whether it's a substance abuse issue, an eating disorder, anger, grief, depression, whatever it is, an environment where you can come Monday nights here, Lynn Haven, Tuesday nights in Norfolk, and find a community that will lead you on a path and a plan to experience life change. People who need grace, right? We're excited about what God's doing through schools. We got a dozen school partnerships, right? We are for our schools. Why are we supporting specifically our local public schools with the greatest need, with the greatest financial need? The schools in neighborhoods that are a little more difficult. Why? Because we know that we care about families, and we care about racial unity, and we care about kids, next generation. All of that comes through schools. So you who work in schools, we love you. We want to care for you. So we're for our schools. I love the work I get to do. My school is the detention, I've said it before, it's the detention center in Norfolk. They have a school in the detention center. I love those guys on G-Pod. So I'll see them on Wednesday. Right? That's why, because we get to go share grace. So here's the summary. Here's the summary of what I've been trying to say. God has always been faithful. God always uses people. Will you help? That's what I want to say today. God has always been faithful. God always uses people. Will you help? Because what Matt showed us in the spring as he was forecasting these financial realities is that while there are some really good things that are happening financially here at Grace, there is also need. And what we know is that if we don't tell you that there's financial need, nobody has ever walked into one of our buildings and thought, I bet there's financial need, right? I mean, you walk in, you're like, man, they have all the volunteers, all the money. That's like a rich church with too many volunteers. It's like, well, no, this is a church full of faithful people. It's actually not a rich church. It's actually a church with a lot of really regular people who are faithful and who give and who serve. But if we don't tell you, then you wouldn't know. So here's, as Matt was doing the forecasting, I'm just going to tell you, and will you help? So here's what we're hoping God would do, right? By December 31st, 2023. We'd love to increase giving to our annual ministry fund. That's the fund that fuels all the good things that happen, to increase that by 11% this calendar year, which is about $500,000, right? That's the first thing. We'd love to see 75 new people automate their giving. If you're not a regular giver, we'd love to set that before you. And we'd love to pay down our existing debt by about $500,000, because that will set us up both for the now and in the future. And so essentially today there are two groups of people. Group one, there are intentionally surrendered givers. There are a bunch of you here who have already said, Jesus, everything I have is yours. My time, my money, my abilities, my purity, my heart, it's all yours. And if you're a person who has laid your life before Jesus, right here at this campus, we sang earlier, I lift my hands up, lay my whole life down. I lay it all to you. So if you've done that, then we would simply ask, would you help? Will you help? Pray about it, talk about it, do what God leads you to do. And if you pray about it and God leads you to not do anything different, then just pray for everybody else. That's it. That's it. It's really, we'd ask you to pray about it. We're asking, will you help? You pray about it. And if he leads you to do something, you do it. If he doesn't, you pray for everybody else. That's it. There's another group of you, though, who are regular around here, and you're I would refer to as random givers. It's not that you never give anywhere to anything, but it's random. And the problem with random generosity, or the problem with being a random giver, if you don't have a plan, if you haven't automated, if you don't know when I get 10, I give this much, if you don't have a plan and you're a random giver, the problem is you're not living in the surrender that leads to life change. And we talked about this a few months ago, but Jesus makes it most clear in the Sermon on the Mount when he says, no one can serve two masters. This is Jesus. Either you'll hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This is not about amount, this is about surrender. And surrender leads to prioritizing and percentage and saying, okay, God, I'm gonna do this, what you've led me to do. And I would just say, if you're a follower of Jesus and you've not surrendered financially, you've not surrendered. And I want you to experience God's grace. And when I'm like this with a part of my life, with any part of my life, but Jesus talked a lot about money. When I'm like this, I can't get the grace he wants to give me. I don't care if you're 16, 22, 36, 86. If you have money, the question is, are you like this or like this? This is how you receive grace. So these are the three goals, and we're not going to talk about this a ton. We are going to celebrate it as it happens. We're going to talk about this on Sundays. It's not a campaign. It's not the start of something. But if you want to be a part of this, if you want to increase whatever new, any of this is you, all the normal ways to do it, will you help? It's all the normal giving ways. You can go to the next slide. You'll figure this out on your own. You can go to the website. You can text. If you want to do it, you'll figure it out. So here's what I want you to know. With just like the last 5 minutes that we have together. I said at the beginning that I wanted to bring up my co-lead pastor, Matt Breitenberg, and he's gonna share with you just some of the more details. And as Matt comes, you can clap for Matt first. But here's what's gonna happen. Here's what's gonna happen. All of you who have any sort of like business thing, you're gonna think to yourselves, I'm so glad God gave Eric that guy, because I just feel better about our church. You're about to feel way better about our church. That's what's gonna happen. All right, Matt, it's all yours. It's all yours. They're all yours.
Thank you. Good morning. My wife Lorraine and I came to this church in 1999. We were inspired by the vision of this church to see and be part of God's grace changing lives. We loved the great culture that's here, that's fueled by our core values of grace, humility, and teamwork. It's been a privilege for us to be part of the history that Eric described. It's a story of God's faithfulness. It's a story of humble beginnings where God did more than we could ask or imagine. It's a story about ordinary people like you and me who God has used to do extraordinary things. Eric talked about our financial goals, but I want to say that money is a resource, simply a resource that is used as a means to the end. And the end is fulfillment of our mission, which is to lead people in a growing relationship with Jesus. So I wanted to share a few thoughts on some questions that you might have about what Eric talked about. First, spending reduction. If the church has this financial need, what has the church been doing about reducing its spending? Well, back in 2020, when we got hit with COVID, we did what a lot of families and businesses did, is we started looking very hard at our spending, and we did a few things. First of all, we repaid our debt to the tune of $600,000 in these last 3 years. We decided that we weren't going to fill some open ministry positions on our staff. We did some cuts in our ministry expenses, and then finally, the staff has made some sacrifices. There are staff here who have decided not to take reimbursement for ministry-related expenses. There are some staff here who have decided to turn down offered pay increases to them. So the staff has made some sacrifices. What about financial oversight? What kind of financial oversight does the church have? Well, first of all, we have something we call the Administrative Management Council. These are Grace members who are skilled professionals and the ones who provide financial oversight to us who are working on staff in the financial area. We also have an outside CPA firm. They come in every year and they do a review. It's very thorough. It takes about 2 months, and so they look over everything that we do financially. And then finally, we have a lender review. So we have a relationship with a bank. They come in and look at our performance every year. We have certain covenants with them that we have to adhere to, minimum cash deposits, debt to service coverage, things like that. And I can tell you that every year we surpass the bank's requirements in this area. What about this 11% or $500,000 target? Why do we have this target for increased giving? Well, by way of background, over the past 3 years, we have saved enough money during COVID to cover the first 2 years of operations of our Strawbridge campus. Our Strawbridge campus costs about $400,000 a year to operate. And we have seen with our other expansion projects that Eric was talking about that we've seen attendance growth and giving growth follow these expansions that we've undertaken. So we need new and increased giving to cover the cost of Strawbridge, to cover increased costs, which I know we all experience, and to restore some of the cuts that we've made in our ministry funding. As a way, an example, we had a great student ministry retreat this past spring. We didn't have enough money in our budget to pay for the buses to transport all the kids and the volunteers, so we had to find that money elsewhere. And then what about debt reduction? Why is that important? Well, as I mentioned, we've already reduced our debt by quite a bit over the past 3 years. We're in a very healthy situation. Our debt represents about 25% of our total investment in land and buildings and furnishings and equipment, 25%. Now, to put that in context, think about it this way. If you were to buy a home, you might decide that you were going to put 20% down and borrow the other 80%. That would be pretty typical. We have almost the exact opposite. We have 75% equity and only 25% debt. So we're in a very healthy situation. So we take our financial stewardship very seriously. I have seen too many churches mismanage their finances. It reflects poorly on the church, and more importantly, it reflects poorly on God and his goodness. We want to be known as a church who honors God and all that he's given us by financially managing ourselves well. Surrendering our finances enables us to participate in something that's bigger than ourselves. In fact, something that is eternal. So I invite you to take this step of faith, be part of God's amazing story. We ask you simply and straightforwardly, will you help? Let's pray. God, thanks for this opportunity that we have to know you, to be loved by you. God, you are so faithful. You are so good. You are truly the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. You are the giver of good gifts. Lord, you are the one from whom all blessings flow. And I pray, Lord, that you would speak to our hearts, to each one of us here, and give us direction on what you would have us do. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.